So basically what keeps happening is I'll be out here, I'll be looking at everything, and then I'll go in the house, and then I'll be thinking about stuff, and be like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do this, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. So I assume that if I had the motor on if I kept the motor where it was on the front suspension of the LeBaron, that it would be too high compared to the body and the chassis, because the chassis is going to come down. Let's say this is the center of the front suspension, the wheels of the LeBaron K-member. The frame's going to come down a little bit, and then the frame's going to be here, and the body's going to be on top of the frame. But I may channel the body to bring the body down. That means the motor's going to be up here, and that's the problem I was thinking about. But the drop in the chassis isn't going to be that big of a drop as I've been thinking, because as you can see, the motor right now is where it would be stock location if this was still in the LeBaron. And you can see where I have the chassis. Well, you can't see because I have a mock-up grill that I was going to make, but I'm not going to make that anymore. But yeah, you can see the chassis right there, how it comes up right here. So it doesn't really have to come up that much. It's basically got to come up maybe another 2 inches, and then it's got to go straight and level to go inside this front suspension. Now, the main problem I'm going to have is not only does this need to come up, but it's also got to go over somehow and in here. So because if you notice, the mount back here and the mount up here aren't straight and parallel with the rest of the front end. So what's going to have to happen is when I make a rail to come through here that bolts on that one, I'm going to have to bend the front and bolt it. So it's basically going to go like this, like a hockey stick. Now, after I make that bend and all, and everything's bolted in, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to build from this. I'm gonna start with just laying the rail in there, taking my measurements and all, and do this bend, have everything bolted up, and then worry about connecting the front end rails to the Bronco chassis. I'm pretty sure it'll be easier that way, because then if everything's measured and good here, then I can have the metal sticking out and I can decide what bends I want to make. But this is my idea. I'm going to have that hockey stick bend. It's going to come through here. I need to make a bend towards the motor just enough to where when I bend it back so it's straight going back, it's going to be the same width as the Bronco chassis. And then I got to make a bend going down. So that's going to have to be done on each side. Only thing is, if you make a bend, here's pen and paper. My only worry is getting the measurements like so precise, because if you have a rail, like you have a rail here, and you cut a pie out of it like that, this is basically a hinge, and this is going to go this way until this area right here closes on one another, and then you can weld it up. Alright, what I was originally going to do is make this the hinge and bring it this way, but then I'm going to have to fill in all that space. So because I need to go this way, and the motor's going to be here, well actually the motor's going to be here, the rail's going to go like that. When I close this up, that needs to be welded, and then I need to make another hinge point over here so that the rail is straight back again, which will connect to the Bronco chassis. So it's going to be from the front, there's going to be that hockey stick bend here, it's going to bolt there, and it's going to bolt here. It's going to come out, here's the motor, it's going to come out, It's going to bend towards the motor, then it's going to go back, and then I have to make another bend, which is going to make this rail go down, which is going to connect to that. So this bend side view is going to look like that. So that's my idea. The only thing is I can't just jump into it. I got to do a lot of stuff. Before I do that, I need to take, this would be a fourth time making sure my measurements are okay. Because this is a big deal. Because if I put the body on there and the body doesn't fit right, or the motor's too far from the body, which that's my most concerned thing here. If I put the body back on the chassis and there's like that much space between the motor and the cab, that'll kind of annoy me. I'd rather there be not enough room to where I have to cut into the firewall than for there to be a huge space between the back of the motor and the cab, because that looks hideous. So yeah, what I'm going to do, so I'm going to uncover the Bronco body, take my measurements again from this first mount right here, because I have that right there. All those stock mounts are on this. So there's the front mount, there's the midway mount basically, and then back here there's another mount there, and then there's a mount there. So basically, luckily I have all my mounts, so I can go to the body and I can measure from the holes where these mounts go on the body, where the body bolts down, and I can measure to the front to see where the firewall stops and all that, and then bring my measurements back here and know where the body is going to be, instead of putting the chassis on, or the body on the chassis and then figuring it out that way. So let's go measure the Bronco body. Alright, let's uncover it. I got the square to help me get everything even. It snowed yesterday, so I have a lovely coat of ice on the tarp cover. Alright. Rat rod. So as you can see, it's holding up pretty good. I've gotten some ventilation starting here. I'll probably just take a stop sign and weld it in there. Well, rivet it in there, because stop signs are aluminum. But yeah, that look cool. I'll get something there. Our front mount bolts down in that circle. I don't know if you can see it. There it is. So basically, I have to measure from that to the front to see the distance. And I know that the bell housing to the Bronco transmission kind of went in this curve here. But even though if the bell housing starts like here, I'll be happy. Because that was a 6-cylinder anyway, so the V8's probably going to come up to here as far as the distributor. So I do want some sort of space there. So yeah, I got to measure. I've measured it before and it came to around like 13 inches. But I got to measure from that hole down there all the way over, because I think that'll be good. That's another, yeah. Well, actually, I gotta add an inch. So 13 inches. All right. So my first measurements were right, because I forgot my measuring tape isn't going exactly where it needs to be, where the measuring or where the hole is for the mounts for the body. So because it's boxed in, I got to add another inch, because another inch I'd be in the center of that circle. So yeah, 13. So from basically, this is the Bronco chassis, written in a very pretty metallic purple, by the way. There's the mount. There's the mounts for the Bronco and motor. Basically, there's a line here, and the measurement is 13 inches. So basically, since the motor bolts in the front end, I basically go by where the motor is, and then I square up the rest of the front end, because that motor can twist and it can go up and down, and basically what keeps it in its place is the transmission mount. That's why when your transmission mount goes bad, it's not a good thing, because then your motor and trans is basically moving like that. Because even though a motor can be bolted in a mount, it's still kind of flexible. So I'll get it roughed in by where the motor's sitting, or the measurements of the motor, and then I'll square the front end up, because I know 13 inches to the back of the motor, I'll be good. And if I need to, I'll just cut out like a little indentation. Well, you don't cut out an indentation, but you can make an indentation or cut out pieces of the firewall to make it fit. And like I said, I'd rather do that than to have a big void between the back of the motor and the firewall. So this is good. This 13 inches is good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the motor out. I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to measure where the trans is, the tail shaft and all. Take the motor out, and then I'm going to clean up the chassis from the Bronco. Clean them up so it's the same cut on each side. That way I'm not dealing with a bunch of crap. And then I'll go from there. Alright. I just want to do everything I possibly can before I take this motor and trans out. There's the trans. .26 inches, and yeah, that's the end of the trans. 26 inches, half of that's 13 inches. So we know the center between the Bronco chassis, at that point where that is, because the chassis does go in and out. At that point where the trans is right now, it's 13 inches in the center. So I think it is time to move the motor and trans. There's no other measurements I need to make. So I'm starting to really think now, because I would love to be able to not deal with that upswept and just bring in the chassis and then just go straight, instead of going out with the chassis, in with the chassis, and then having to go down and then up. Well, actually, I'm not going to have to go back like this, because it's going to naturally fit right in there. Let me get this motor out. Like I said before, none of these measurements are the actual measurements. They're estimations. But I have a happy zone within like 3 inches. So basically, once I get the motor out of here, I can't move everything around with the motor. So once I get the motor out of here, I've taken all the measurements I needed with the motor and trans in there. Once I get the motor out, then I will take the wheels off of everything, put everything on jack stands. I don't know how high yet. I know the Bronco chassis is going to have to be lower, so I'll try to put that on the lowest tier of the jack stands. And this front end is going to have to be a little bit higher to keep my ride height. So, which it's pretty good right there, but as you know with jack stands, you can't just have a happy medium. You have to have either this tier or this tier. So I'm going to have to make do. But yeah, so once I have the wheels off, I'll get everything lined up and even and on, and I'll be good after that. I'm going to put it on this cart. It's the same cart that it was on before, but it fell off because I was trying to pull it around the dirt. And it was wet out, so it'll be fine in here. I'll ratchet strap it to it. I'm actually going to have to keep this out of the way. Let me move all this stuff. See, I have the room. I just have to move a bunch of stuff every time I want to do something. which I'm sure all of you can relate. Alright. I know this looks stupid, but this is a technique. There we go. Alright, so let me get away from this wheel though. There you go. Wheel off. Get this out of the way. Actually, when I say get this out of the way, I mean put it somewhere else where it's going to be in the way. Alright. Whatever. Since I basically just hacked the front of the Bronco off carefree, I made a template so I could make sure each side was identical. So I drilled some holes, line them up, and then there's the template. And I did that on each side. So now each frame rail looks the same. And since that subframe's out of there, I'll be able to put metal in there.